If you love basketball, this is the weekend for you. Not just the Wizards, but I got the Caps, I got spring training baseball and the WBC and NFL free agency. But this guy is soaking up the sun down there in Orlando, but not really inside the gym. He will be calling the Terps and Xavier. This could be the greatest weekend of our lives, or it could be awful. Ian Eagle joins us here from CBS. What's going on, my brother? How you been, man?
Doing well, Nestor. My 20th NCAA tournament. I don't know where the time goes, my friend.
Well, yeah, so you're used to this. This is like a real cram job for broadcasters, right? It's like a lot of people get ready for the draft, and people know the draft, the Mayoks and those guys like the back of their hands. You get a couple of days, like they just slap the teams down and say, go. And everybody becomes an expert on 14 seeds. This is a hard work, and this is a tough week to call games. Maybe like preseason NFL or something like that, right?
Yeah, no, by far it's the most challenging 3 or 4 day period of my year, just based on the fact that you have no idea who you're going to be assigned to. And for someone like me who really enjoys the preparation for all of these events, you can't prepare until Sunday night at 9 o'clock when you get the phone call. And I wish I could tell you that I have no experience from a cram perspective back in my college days, but I do. I recognize that you've got to familiarize yourself with all 8 teams, and then you have to walk that very fine line because, in your case, you and your audience, you know all about Maryland, but I have another side of the viewing public that knows nothing about Maryland. So you have to really walk that fine line of going with brushstrokes, but having enough of the inside and nuggets that will resonate with the viewing public that's very familiar with all 8 of these teams. So that's the mentality. You just try to prepare yourself as best you can, and if you get good games, trust me, that's what takes precedent. All the other stuff means very little.
We're really familiar with this, the same process. We don't do it with 8 teams, but we do it with 1, right? I mean, who's Maryland going to play? They were the last team out of the hopper. I was a little worried they weren't going to make it for them a few minutes. I'm like, what? I mean, that Big Ten loss on Friday was awful, but their name gets called, and obviously Turgeon was excited about it. And then it's Xavier. I don't need to tell you that you could be Ian and they could be Xavier, and they'd both be wrong at this point, but people call them Xavier all the time, and they're like, who's on Xavier? And I guess we're all going to become acquainted with Trevon Blewett here over the next couple days, and also the story of Edmund Sumner, who was their guy, and they lost their guy. The Terps are without Tchaikovsky. This would have been a better basketball game in January, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it, and just to be a little bit of the reminder of how quickly your brain waves can fluctuate. In addition to having Xavier in my pod, I also have Florida State, and their point guard is Xavier Rattan-Mays. So you got to separate between the first name of one guy on another team and the name of the actual school that you're calling in the matchup against Maryland.
Yeah, you say tomato, I say tomato, right? I mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. We all get to the same result. Yeah, Xavier has overcome some tough moments, some bad breaks. These were big-time members of their team. Edmund Sumner was someone they relied on. They were 15-5 with him in the starting lineup. He was their lead guard. He stirred the drink for them. He was averaging 15 points and 5 assists per game. Now they ask Quentin Gooden to step in as a freshman, who they still have very high hopes for. He was a big recruit coming out of the state of Kentucky. They just didn't expect him to be in charge this quickly. The offense runs through Trevon Blewett, all Big East performer, 18 points per game, just under 6 rebounds per game. He fills up a stat sheet. He's multidimensional. He could be a guard. He could be a wing. He could be a power forward. He does a little bit of everything for this team. They also lost Miles Davis, played only 3 games this year, left the program. There was controversy there. And he was another integral part of what Chris Mack was doing. With that said, they've shortened their rotation. They'll play only 8. They've got 3 guys that will contribute off the bench, and that's it. Beyond the guys that we mentioned, they have a bunch of role players. J.P. Makura is someone that can fill it up, and he's a streaky shooter. He can hurt you. He could stretch the floor, and someone Maryland will have to account for. Inside, that's not a strength. Rashid Gaston is their biggest body. 6'9", 240, transferred from Norfolk State, takes up a lot of room. They'll bring Tyreek Jones and Sean O'Mara off the bench. That's their team. There's not much more to it. I think what Maryland should be looking at as an advantage for them is the fact that they're deeper than Xavier, and while they're young, they still believe that they've got these young guys coming together at the right time. I know they were upset with the way they played in the Big Ten tournament, but I'm encouraged by the way that Kevin Herter has played in recent weeks. The combination of Trimble and Cowan can be very tough to guard if you're not accustomed to going against smaller guards. And I think Justin Jackson has a chance to be a legitimate star, just like everything about his game. He was quiet in the Big Ten tournament, but he's one of those guys that could easily pick up steam in the NCAA tournament and start to get some national notice.
Well, he looked a little frightened. I mean, to shoot the ball when he did, he had the air ball, the confidence was gone. It really is a movement for these kids coming from smaller gyms to go into an NBA gym and to adjust to the shooting, much like every year when they go into domes, which is outrageous, as you know, that it takes some time. And more than that, just being young, being new, that atmosphere on Friday, I know it was insane in that place, and you never see that at conference tournaments, not even in New York with St. John's or whatever, because you just can't get that many tickets usually, and this was an interesting weekend, I think, all the way around for the Big Ten, which wondered whether D.C. would be good or not. It would have been wonderful to see Maryland ride through, but, I would say this, they were not punished for how poorly they played Friday night on a home court. Getting the 6th seed, avoiding Duke, avoiding Louisville, avoiding the 2 seeds, seeing Florida State potentially if they can get through Xavier. I said all along, if in January you would have told me they're going to be a 6th seed playing in Orlando, they're going to see Xavier, and they're going to see Florida State, what do you think? I'd say, sign me up for that. I mean, no Kentucky, no Kansas, no Villanova, no North Carolina, okay, give me that deal. So for past years, there have been some fans saying that maybe they didn't get the easiest way, and I know every year that's a hardship for other teams. I'm okay with the draw this year. They've got a legitimate chance to still be playing next week out in San Jose.
Yeah, I saw them 2 years ago in the tournament against West Virginia, and that was a bad matchup. It just turned out to be a bad matchup for Maryland. West Virginia was so physical. They took Melo Trimble, literally took him out of the game because of that screen out front, and Bob Huggins had a clear plan in mind of how to stop Maryland, and it worked. Last year, they played a better team. They lost to Kansas in the Sweet 16. They didn't match up that well against them. It was a tough matchup for them. I would tell you that this year's team is a little under the radar. I'm not sure that they got the same kind of attention that they got from a year ago. But with that said, I like the balance of this team. And they're probably in a really good spot compared to what it easily could have been after that Northwestern loss. I'm going to agree with you 100%. You take the 6th seed, you take the West region, you take the potential of Florida State, an inexperienced team, less experience in the tournament than even Maryland, who's playing a bunch of freshmen. So with all of that, the one thing that has stood out with Maryland, no matter what's happened offensively, defensively, they've come to play game in and game out. I think that's something that Mark Turgeon is very proud of. The fact that this team has bought into the defensive mindset, that's been pretty consistent throughout the year. They allowed 68 points per game. They're not a great offensive team. They rely so much on Melo to stir the drink, to make it happen. And the only concern you have is, as you just stated about NBA arenas, this isn't just an arena in Orlando, it's a stadium. It's one of the biggest venues. When you walk onto that floor and you look up, it's very similar to Staples Center or United Center. It just keeps going. It's not intimate by any stretch. How will the freshmen handle that? And the lights are turned on in the first game of the night session against a team that pretty much feels like they've got nothing to lose. They were considered a bubble team. They got a big win over Butler in the Big East tournament. I think that sealed the deal for Xavier. I don't think they come in with any expectations other than, hey, let's let it all cut loose and see if we can get a win in the tournament.
Thoughts about Florida State? I mean, the size is the issue for Maryland. They're never going to rebound well. I mean, they're just not big enough. So when they don't shoot well, they're probably not going to get a lot of offensive rebounds, especially against beefier teams. That would be their undoing, seeing a big team that can get out on the perimeter and guard them a little bit because Maryland can't find rebounds.
Florida State's huge. You look at the two biggest teams in college basketball right now, Florida State and Duke. Their front line is Ojo at 7'1", Isaac at 6'10", backups Chris Kumaji is 7'4", Jarquez Smith is 6'9", and they'll bring Phil Kofer in, who is a sturdy 6'8", 218. Their backcourt, Rattan Mays is 6'4", Terrence Mann is 6'6", Dwayne Bacon is 6'7". They're huge. They're trees. Obviously, they have to get past Florida Gulf Coast first, and I think that could be challenging considering their style of play, very aggressive, not as big as Florida State, but they're long. Their center's 6'9" with a wingspan of 7'4", and I don't think Demetrius Morant will be intimidated by the idea of going against Florida State. They've got a player in Mark Eddie Norelia, who was dealing with injury. Last year was the team's leading scorer, but others have stepped forward. Brandon Goodwin has become the go-to guy for the Eagles at 18 points per game, transfer from Central Florida. It's a little bit of a ragtag group, a bunch of transfers, a bunch of JUCOs, but it's worked. And Joe Dooley has this team believing in their aggressive style. Remember, they were known as Dunk City in 2013 when they went out, upset Georgetown, got to the Sweet 16. Everybody now was familiar with their program because nobody knew about them before that tournament run. They actually have more dunks this year than they had that year when they got the moniker. So, interesting matchup, and the fact that it's a Florida team against a Florida team, there is a little bit of, hey, we've got something to prove. We know Florida State gets all the accolades. Let's get some Sunshine State love here. I'm really curious to see how that one plays out. I don't think Florida State is a guarantee to advance on, just based on their lack of experience and the fact that this team is still going through this for the first time, just like FGC is. We'll see how all of that plays out, but good matchup for Maryland. If they advance to the second round, they should be able to hang with either team.
He is Ian Eagle. He's calling all things NCAA tournament from Orlando and their pod down there that also includes Virginia, UNC, Wilmington, as well as Florida and East Tennessee State. If you're following along on the east side of your bracket, this whole tournament's interesting, right? I know you're familiar with the New York side. Next week, the East Finals will be up there. Potential Villanova Duke, potential Kansas, Louisville out in Kansas City, potential Carolina, Kentucky, and a lot of traps along the way. Kentucky's going to have to get through UCLA probably. A lot of good basketball to be played here the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Nestor, we felt this developing over the course of the season and constantly heard, hey, it's going to be a really competitive tournament. You're going to see upsets this year. The parity is so much a part of college basketball. And I've heard that in previous years, and then it's chalk. It's one or two seeds that advance on. I do think there's still a separation from those top programs from that next tier. Can Gonzaga finally make it to a Final Four? Do they shake what has been a part of their history and take that next step? You mentioned UCLA, a team I saw earlier in the season lose at home against Arizona. High-powered offense, not known for its defense. Very much the time for Steve Alford to get this team over the hump and bring back the pride to the Bruins program. Villanova, tremendous season. I don't know how many teams win a championship and then the next year don't really get the kind of response that you should get when you dominate the way that they did. To me, they're still the best team in college basketball, maybe unheralded because they don't have future NBA stars all over their roster, but they've got cohesiveness. They've got the blueprint because they've done it before, and I think they're equally as dangerous this year. North Carolina, stacked, talented. Kansas, not deep, but up top in their roster, really gifted. Great storylines. This really should be a fun run. excited to be a part of it as always.
And somewhere along the line, there'll be an upset. We just have to hope it's Florida State. Hey, man, always great having you on. It'll be football season here in no time at all, but I know they're going to keep you busy around there chasing the basketball side of things. Always a pleasure to have you on. Appreciate you making time.
All right, bud. Talk to you soon, Nestor.
My man, Ian Eagle, joining us here from Orlando, MIC. See you soon. The Terps will be playing at 6:50 on Thursday night. He will be calling the action for CBS along with Evan Washburn and a bunch of other friends down there in Orlando. It'll be a great weekend for basketball, a great weekend all the way around. Caps and the Wizards playing pretty well right now. Orioles doing some spring training. Adam Jones and Manny Machado running around in the World Baseball Classic. Good weekend, and hopefully the Ravens get some more free agent business done. We have our trip to London on sale now at WNST.net. Some updates up there for you. Go up to the Road Trips tab. You can always send me an email, nasty@WNST.net. We'll try to give you some personal attention if you are planning on joining us in London. So we're looking forward to that. Buy a Toyota Audio Vault is there 24 hours a day for anything that you missed. We had a snow day on Tuesday, did a lot of work, a lot of great stuff, a lot of previews on the Maryland game, as well as some looks around the Redskins, the Ravens, the NFL, there's Major League Baseball. We've covered it all this week. Find it in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault or download the TuneIn Radio app at WNST.net. Last but never least, we're very available 24 hours a day from anywhere the internet is served. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.